GPT-3, or Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3, is a deep learning algorithm that produces human-like text. It's the third-generation language prediction model created by San Francisco startup OpenAI, which was co-founded by Elon Musk. This program is better than any prior program at producing text which could have been written by a human. The reason that this is such a breakthrough is that it may prove useful to many companies and has great potential in automating articles, like this one published by The Guardian. Yes, this news article was produced by an AI. It can write computer code in any language. It can read an article, answer questions from the information in the article, and even summarize that article for you. Not to mention, it can also generate pictures from text. Some of these things aren't new by themselves, but doing all of these things under the same algorithm is pretty impressive. The internet is buzzing with its release. David Chalmers, an Australian philosopher, described GPT-3 as, quote, one of the most interesting and important AI systems ever produced. A review in Wired said that GPT-3 was, quote, provoking chills across Silicon Valley. The National Law Review said GPT-3 is, quote, an impressive step in the larger process towards a more general intelligence. Instead of just talking about it, let me show you. Here are some examples of beta testers on Twitter putting the AI through its paces. Here it is writing some Java code just when given a text description. Or, how about making a mock-up website by just copying and pasting a URL with a description? In this example, it finished writing an essay on how to run an effective board meeting. The results were so good that the user actually plans on using it. In this next example, after receiving the input of a complicated explanation of Bitcoin, the AI summarizes it and explains it in simple terms. Here, it demonstrates some understanding of objects. It can even explain computer code back to you in plain English, or even suggest improvements. Or, how about building a machine learning model just by describing the dataset and required output? No coding required. What about a Turing test? AI usually struggles at common sense, but GPT-3 flies through these examples. In this example, you can see that it possesses some comprehension. How about taking this a step further? What about an imaginary conversation between a Twitter user and Einstein? I'll read some of it to you. Twitter user Manuel: Albert Einstein, nice to meet you. I'm Manuel Arrayoz, and I've come from the future to meet you. Einstein laughs.
Oh, really? How is the future?
It's amazing actually. What year is this?
It's 1947. It's January. This is Princeton, New Jersey. You're in America.
Your name is Albert Einstein, right?
That's correct.
Do you mind if I ask you a few questions for a book I'm writing? It's about the great minds of our times.
I guess I can spare a few minutes.
Thanks so much.
Go ahead. Ask me whatever you want.
What are you doing here in Princeton, in the US? You were born in Germany, right?
Yes, I was born in Germany, but I was also born Jewish. And the Nazis were coming to power, so I fled here to the United States.
How do you like it here?
It's amazing. I'm so proud of being able to contribute to science and help humanity.
And it goes on. But when he starts talking about concepts within physics, that's when it gets especially interesting. It's surprisingly coherent. I'll leave a link to the full interview below. And the cherry on the cake, it can generate faces from a text description. An AI that can build websites just from a description, answer common sense questions, assume the personality of Einstein and have a conversation, explain complicated things in simple terms, explain computer code to you in plain English, or build faces from a text description. So what is going on here, and how does this all work? GPT-3 is a massive neural network that has the capacity of 175 billion machine learning parameters. It was trained on hundreds of billions of words, including books, Wikipedia, and the general web, which includes coding. The training data is all-encompassing and doesn't require further training for specific language tasks. In other words, it can apply what it's learned to many other things without human supervision. It's 10 times bigger than the previous largest language learning model, which was made by Microsoft in February 2020. As a general rule, the larger the number of parameters, the more accurate the AI. For text, GPT-3 calculates how likely one word is to appear in a text, given the other words in the text. This is what is known as the conditional probability of words. For example, in the sentence, I wanted to go for a jog, so I went to get my blank. The blank can be filled with any word. There are countless possibilities, but from what the AI has learned, it thinks that the probabilities of shoes being the next word of the sentence is higher than the word chicken, for example. In September of 2020, Microsoft announced that it had licensed the exclusive use of GPT-3. The public can still use it to receive an output, but only Microsoft has control of the source code.
True. 2012, my body started to do things that I hadn't done before. My muscles were twitching. I was stumbling, or I was not making a play I would have always made.
It feels like everything has changed. I think the hardest part for me is that I'm in this in between where I am still taught, but not everything I've said is understood. That night, I couldn't even get the words out. I couldn't get the letters out of my mouth. I mean, this couldn't be me. This couldn't be my story. I mean, I'm too strong. But then things got hard. Slowly but surely, my body started to fight me.
Okay.
ALS, which stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It causes the death of neurons controlling voluntary muscles.
My favorite was when you had the handle.
Language, the ability to communicate with one another. It's something that makes us uniquely human, making communication an impactful application for AI. So, how does speech recognition work? First, the sound of our voice is converted into a waveform, which is really just a picture of the sound. Waveforms are then matched to transcriptions or labels for each word. These maps exist for most words in the English language. This is where machine learning takes over. Using millions of voice samples, a deep learning model is trained to map input sounds to output words. Then, the algorithm uses rules such as grammar and syntax to predict each word in a sentence. This is how AI can tell the difference between there, and there.
The speech recognition model that Google uses work very well for people who have a voice that sounds similar to the examples that were used to train this model. In 90% of cases, it will recognize what you want to say.
Dimitri's not in that 90%. For someone like him, it doesn't work at all. So he created a model based on a sample of one.
After I trained several models, I noticed that I need to shout in order it understood me well. So I specifically trained phrases رأيت كبيرة كمان. After I added this, it started to understand me.
But making a new unique model with unique data for every new and unique person is slow and inefficient. Tim calls his dad Yo-Yo. Others with ALS may call their dads something else. Can we build one machine that recognizes many different people? And how can we do it fast?
So this data doesn't really exist, we have to actually collect it. So we started this partnership with ALS TDI in Boston. They helped us collect voice samples from people who have ALS.
Focused. How can we use technologies we have to help these people right away? We had this huge influx of resources, of cash, and that gave us the ability to reach out to people with ALS who are in our programs to share their data with us. That's what got us the big enough data sets to really attract Google.
Fernando didn't initially set out to make speech recognition work better, but in the process of better understanding the disease, he built a huge database of ALS voices. Partnered with one of the people who started the Euphonia project, Michael Brenner.
Hey, Fernando.
Hey, how are you doing?
A Google research scientist and Harvard-trained mathematician who's using machine learning to solve scientific Hail Marys like this one.
Tim Shaw has recorded almost 2,000 utterances, and so we decided to apply our technology to see if we could build a recognizer that understood him. The goal, right, for Tim is to get it so that it works outside of the things that he recorded. The problem is that we have no idea how big of a set that this will work on. Dimitri had recorded upwards of 15,000 sentences, which is just an incredible amount of data. We couldn't possibly expect anyone else to record so many sentences. So we know that technically we have to be able to do this with much less recordings from a person. So it's not clear it will work.
I go the opposite way.
So that didn't work at all.
Not at all.
He said, I go the opposite way, and it says,
Where
I
can I-
know that was. When it doesn't recognize, we then sort of jiggle around the parameters in the speech recognizer, then we give it another sentence. And the idea is that eventually you'll get it to understand. Yes.
Interpreting speech is one thing, but recreating the way a real person sounds is an order of magnitude harder.
Playing Tecmo Bowl, eating Christmas cookies and turkey.
Voice imitation is also known as voice synthesis, which is basically speech recognition in reverse. First, machine learning converts text back into waveforms. These waveforms are then used to create sound. This is how Alexa and Google Home are able to talk to us. Now the teams from DeepMind and Google AI are working to create a model to imitate the unique sound of Tim's voice.
I'm a little bit nervous. I don't know if the app is going to behave the way we hope it will behave, but I'm also very excited to learn new things and to hear Tim's feedback. I brought two versions with me. I was supposed to pick, but I decided to just bring both just in case one is better than the other. And just so you know, this one here was trained only using recordings of your voice. And this one here was trained using recordings of your voice and also from other participants from ALS TDI who went through the same exercise of... So, okay, so let's, I was hoping we could give them a try. Are we ready?
Who are you talking about?
I got it.
I got it.
Is it coming?
Yes.
Are you working today? It's wonderful.
Tim wrote a letter to his younger self. They are words written by a 34-year-old man with ALS who has trouble communicating, sent back in time to a 22-year-old on the cusp of NFL greatness.
So let me give this a try. So I just like using this letter because it's just so beautiful. So let me see if this is gonna work.
So I've decided to write you this letter because I have so much to tell you. I want to explain to you why it's so difficult for me to speak, the diagnosis, all of it, and what my life is like now, because one day you will be in my shoes, living with the same struggles.
நாங்கள் குடும்பத்தில் 4 பேர் இருக்கோம். எங்கள் வீட்டுக்காரர் பேர் பகீரதன், பிள்ளை பவித்ராஸ், யோகேஸ்வரன். வாச தொளிப்போம், வீடு வாச தொளிச்சு கூட்டி கோலம் போட்டுட்டு பிள்ளைகளுக்கு காஃபி போடுவோம். 5 மணிக்கு எழுந்திருப்பேன்.
Santhi does not have an easy life. It's made more difficult because she has diabetes.
Early on, before they actually lose vision, நேரா பாருங்க. In the early stages, if a doctor is examining the eye or you take a picture of the back of the eye, you will see lots of those bleeding spots in the retina. சக்கரை எத்தனை வருஷமா இருக்கு? அதோடு சேர்த்து 2 கண்ணிலையும் நரம்பு திரையில ரத்த கசிவு ஆயிருக்கு. Today the doctors are not enough to do the screening. We have very limited ophthalmologists, so there should be other ways where you can screen the diabetic patients for the diabetic complication.
Team at Google. Made up of doctors and engineers, they're exploring ways to use machine learning to solve some of the world's leading healthcare problems.
So we started with, could we train an AI model that can somehow help read these images, that can decrease the number of doctors required to do this task?
So this is the normal view. When you start looking more deeply, then this can be a microaneurysm, right? This one here.
Could be. The team uses the same kind of machine learning that allows us to organize our photos or tag friends on social media. Image recognition. First, models are trained using tagged images of things like cats or dogs. After looking at thousands of examples, the algorithm learns to identify new images without any human help. For the retinopathy project, over 100,000 eye scans were graded by eye doctors who rated each eye scan on a scale from 1 to 5, from healthy to diseased. These images were then used to train a machine learning algorithm. Over time, the AI learned to predict which eyes showed signs of disease.
This is the assistance view, where the model's predictions are actually projected on the original image, and it's picking up the pathologies very nicely.
Which is why Jessica and Lily's teams began testing AI-enabled eye scanners there, in its most rural areas, like Dr. Kim's Aravind Eye Clinics.
Is the camera on?
Now it's on. Yeah. So once the camera is up, we need to check the network connectivity.
The patient comes in, they get their pictures taken of the back of the eye, one for the left eye, one for the right eye. The images are uploaded to this algorithm. And once the algorithm performs its analysis, it sends the results back to the system along with a referral recommendation.
It's good. It's up and running.
Yeah.
Because the algorithm works in real time, you can get a real-time answer to a doctor, and that real-time answer comes back to the patient.
உள்ளேயே பாருங்கய்யா, கண்ணை சிமிட்ட வேண்டாம், நேரா மட்டும் உள்ள பாருங்க. சர்க்கரையினால கண்ணோட நரம்புல ஃபுல்லா ரத்த கசிவு இருக்கு. அது போக அந்த நரம்புலையும் நீர் கோர்த்து இருக்கு. சரிங்களா? இதுக்கு வந்து மதுரையில போய் ஒரு தடவை பார்க்கணும். பெரிய டாக்டர் பார்த்துட்டு அடுத்து உங்களுக்கு என்ன பண்ணணும்ன்றத, அது போக நீர் கோர்த்துருக்கவும் செஞ்சிருக்கு. அதனால அங்க போய் உடனே பார்க்கணும். சரிங்களா?
Retinopathy is when high blood sugar damages the retina. Blood leaks, and the laser treatment basically welds the blood vessels to stop the leakage. Routine eye exams can spot the problem early. In rural or remote areas like here, AI can step in and be that early detection system.
Is opening our eyes to so much potential. Even within these images, we're starting to see some interesting signals that might tell us about someone's risk factors for heart disease. And from there, you start to think about all of the images that we collect in medicine. Can you use AI or an algorithm to help patients and doctors get ahead of a given diagnosis?
你的专注力显示得很高。
Teachers at this primary school in China
蓝色是走神了，
know exactly when someone isn't paying attention.
白色就是你可能跟网络还没有连接好。
These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents. China has big plans to become a global leader in artificial intelligence. It has enabled a cashless economy where people make purchases with their faces. A giant network of surveillance cameras with facial recognition helps police monitor citizens. Meanwhile, some schools offer glimpses of what the future of high-tech education in the country might look like.
做出选择吧 Good job!
Classrooms have robots that analyze students' health and engagement levels. Students wear uniforms with chips that track their locations. There are even surveillance cameras that monitor how often students check their phones or yawn during classes. These gadgets have alarmed Chinese netizens. But schools say it wasn't hard for them getting parental consent to enroll kids into what is one of the world's largest experiments in AI education. A program that's supposed to boost students' grades while also feeding powerful algorithms. The government has poured billions of dollars into the project, bringing together tech giants, startups, and schools. For this 5th grade class, the day begins with putting on a brain wave sensing gadget. Students then practice meditating.
现在想象我们眉心有一点柔和的光芒绽放。
The device is made in China and has 3 electrodes, 2 behind the ears and 1 on the forehead. These sensors pick up electrical signals sent by neurons in the brain. The neural data is then sent in real time to the teacher's computer. So while students are solving math problems, a teacher can quickly find out who's paying attention and who's not.
说明这段时间他是有点在那走神的。
A report is then generated that shows how well the class was paying attention. It even details each student's concentration level at 10-minute intervals. It's then sent to a chat group for parents.
就是他可以看到每个人的评分。
The reports are detailed, but whether these devices really work and what they exactly measure isn't as clear. We were curious if the headbands could actually measure concentration, so one of our reporters tried on the device.
但我没有感觉自己特别集中。
This is a new technology with still fairly little research behind it.
Theodore Zanto is a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco. He was surprised to learn that this tech, called electroencephalography, also known as EEG, is being used in the classroom on children. It's usually used by doctors in hospitals and labs.
EEG is very susceptible to artifacts. And so if you are itchy or just a little fidgety, or the EEG wasn't set up properly so that the electrodes didn't have a good contact, affects the signal.
Despite the chances for false readings, teachers told us the headbands have forced students to become more disciplined. Teachers say the students now pay better attention during class, and that has made them study harder and achieve higher scores.
上课认真听讲，作业做的基本上是全对的。
But not all students are as enthusiastic.
就是自己感觉是脑筋，我感觉这里有个印，紧的。
This 5th grader, whom we caught dozing off in class, told us his parents punish him for low attention scores. And that kind of data adds a new kind of pressure for students. Companies we interviewed said the data can go to government-funded research projects. We spoke to parents who were unclear about where the data ended up, and they didn't seem to care too much. Santos says there's likely no privacy protection at all.
In a classroom, if you're trying to make an assessment of an individual student, you really can't anonymize it.
Experts and citizens alike are sounding alarms about various aspects of the country's huge push into artificial intelligence. These classrooms are laboratories for future generations. And while these new tools may potentially help some 200 million students raise their grades, just how this all works out won't be apparent until they become adult citizens.
where we have two input images, one for content and one for style, and the output is our content image reimagined with this new style. The cool part is that the content can be a photo straight from our camera, and the style can be a painting, which leads to super fun and really good looking results. We have seen plenty of papers doing variations of style transfer, but I always wonder, can we push this concept further? And the answer is yes. For instance, few people know that style transfer can also be done for video. First, we record a video with our camera, then take a still image from the video and apply our artistic style to it. Then, our style will be applied to the entirety of the video. The main advantage of this new method compared to previous ones is that they either take too long or we have to run an expensive pre-training step. With this new one, we can just start drawing and see the output results right away. But it gets even better. Due to the interactive nature of this new technique, we can even do this live. All we need to do is change our input drawing and it transfers the new style to the video as fast as we can draw. This way, we can refine our input style for as long as we wish or until we find the perfect way to stylize the video. And there is even more. If this works interactively, then it has to be able to offer an amazing workflow where we can capture a video of ourselves live and mark it up as we go. Let's see. Oh wow, just look at that. It is great to see that this new method also retains temporal consistency over a long time frame, which means that even if the marked up keyframe is from a long time ago, it can still be applied to the video and the outputs will show minimal flickering. And note that we can not only play with the colors, but with the geometry too. Look, we can warp the style image and it will be reflected in the output as well. I bet there is going to be a follow-up paper on more elaborate shape modifications as well. And this new work improves upon previous methods in even more areas. For instance, this is a method from just 1 year ago, and here you see how it struggled with contour-based styles. Here's a keyframe of the input video, and here's the style that we wish to apply to it. Later, this method from last year seems to lose not only the contours, but a lot of visual detail is also gone. So, how did the new method do in this case? Look, it not only retains the contours better, but a lot more of the sharp details remain in the outputs. Amazing. Now note that this technique also comes with some limitations. For instance, there is still some temporal flickering in the outputs, and in some cases, separating the foreground and the background is challenging. But really, such incredible progress in just 1 year, and I can only imagine what this method will be capable of 2 more papers down the line.
What are we doing?
We're making an action movie, supposedly, right?
Right, but we're not going to write it.
We're not going to write it.
No. This machine is going to write it.
It lives in here.
Is it in there, or is it like in the cloud or something?
It's in both places.
Okay. And this is Benjamin.
What is Benjamin?
Right. What is Benjamin?
Who is Benjamin, or what is Benjamin? Benjamin is an artificial intelligence program that writes screenplays. A digital brainchild of 2 creative and accomplished humans. Sharp, a BAFTA award-winning director, and this guy.
My name's Ross Goodwin. I'm a tech artist. That means I make art with code.
When was the last time Hollywood produced something original? This year? Last year? 1999? The 70s? What makes a story original anyway? Can we get AI to figure that out?
People often say that creativity is the one thing that machines will never have. The surprising thing is that it's actually the other way around. Art and creativity is actually easier than problem solving. We already have computers that make great paintings, that make music that's indistinguishable from music that's composed by people. So machines are actually capable of creativity.
This machine is a deep learning language model. What you can do with a language model is at each step, you predict the next word, letter, or space, sort of like how a human writes, actually, 1 letter at a time. It's a lot like a more sophisticated version of the autocomplete on your phone.
Ross feeds Benjamin with a very large amount of screenplays.
199 screenplays, 26,271,247 bytes.
Right, of text.
Of text.
Like A, B, C, D, including spaces?
Including spaces.
Including spaces.
It takes all this input, and it looks at it, and it tries to find statistical patterns in that input. So for example, in movies, people are constantly saying, what's going on? Who are you? That kind of thing. And that turns up a lot in the output because it's reliably in the input.
The more material you have, the better it works.
We've made 3 Benjamin films so far. Sunspring, It's No Game and Zone Out. Sunspring was the simplest and probably still the best idea, which was just verbatim. You get the machine to write a screenplay, you pull out one chunk of screenplay, and you just shoot it.
In a future with mass unemployment, young people are forced to sell blood. It's something I can do.
You should see the boy and shut up.
When you look at Sunspring on YouTube and you see the kind of the thumbs up and the thumbs down, there's mainly thumbs up, but there's a decent chunk of thumbs down. And on the whole, based on the comments, those are people who, within a few seconds of the beginning, or even just once they'd seen the premise of like how we made it, they've gone, this definitely doesn't mean anything. And they've told their brain, don't even look for meaning. Just forget it, just shrug it off. I'm sorry, this is fascinating to me. We've built a robot that writes screenplays that are weird, but they're not completely insane.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's right.
Great art requires human experience, but our human experience is now completely mapped into data. This is where machine learning keeps surprising us, is that it actually has figured out stuff that we didn't realize it could.
Meaning, once all our human experiences are mapped into data, AI will be able to mine it for material and make art? Look for patterns in our happiness and heartbreak? Kick out a new song or movie?
DeepMind published a follow-up work that looks at performances on the piano from the masters of the past and learns to play in their style. A key differentiating factor here was that it did not do what most previous techniques do, which was looking at the score of the performance. These older techniques knew what to play, but not how to play these notes, and these are the nuances that truly make music come alive. This method learned from raw audio waveforms and thus could capture much more of the artistic style. Let's listen to it, and in the meantime, you can look at the composers it has learned from to produce these works. However, in 2019, OpenAI recognized that text-based music synthesizers can not only look at a piece of score, but can also continue it, thereby composing a new piece of music, and what's more, they could even create really cool blends between genres. Listen as their AI starts out from the first 6 notes of a Chopin piece and transitions into a pop style with a bunch of different instruments entering a few seconds in. Very cool. The score-based techniques are a little lacking in nuance, but can do magical genre mixing and more, whereas the waveform-based techniques are more limited, but can create much more sophisticated music. Are you thinking what I am thinking? Yes, you have guessed right. Hold on to your papers, because in OpenAI's new work, they tried to fuse the two concepts together, or, in other words, take a genre, an artist, and even lyrics as an input, and it would create a song for us. Let's marvel at a few curated samples together. The genre, artist, and lyrics informations will always be on the screen.
I'm just a gay fish for the hill, from Goethe to the Ketterack. When you see tea with because there's some beach. At last, it was up in the song. A for you.
Love the AI-based lyrics too. This has the nuance of waveform-based techniques with the versatility of score-based methods. Glorious! If you look in the video description, you will find a selection of uncurated music samples as well. It does what it does by compressing the raw audio waveform into a compact representation. In this space, it is much easier to synthesize new patterns, after which we can decompress it to get the output waveforms. It has also learned to group up and cluster a selection of artists which reflects how the AI thinks about them. There is so much cool stuff in here that it would be worthy of a video of its own. Note that it currently takes 9 hours to generate 1 minute of music, and the network was mainly trained on Western music and only speaks English, but you know, as we always say around here, 2 more papers down the line and it will be improved significantly. Instrumentation of this exact paper we have talked about, which was made by Weights and Biases. I think organizing these experiments really showcases the usability of their system. Weights and Biases provides tools to track your experiments in your deep learning projects. Their system is designed to save you a ton of time and money, and it is actively used in projects at prestigious labs such as OpenAI, Toyota Research, GitHub, and more. And the best part is that if you're an academic or have an open source project, you can use their tools for free. It really is as good as it gets. Make sure to visit them through wnb.com/papers.
AI protect people from destructive forces of nature.
The laws of nature don't change. Human beings change in response to AI, but nature doesn't.
600 miles long, from Vancouver Island to Northern California, could cause the biggest natural disaster in North American history. It's generally accepted that the big one is coming, maybe within 50 years, but experts can't be certain or more specific.
I get a lot of windshield time with this job. I drive all over Washington and Oregon. It's awesome.
The PNSN is a network of seismic sensors, and the idea is that we're continuously monitoring for earthquake activity of all scales all the time.
This is one of the 400 seismic stations in Washington and Oregon. This is a strong motion accelerometer, so it is looking for large earthquakes.
Earthquake early warning system is not predicting an earthquake. It's identifying those first waves that are coming in.
Our instruments are sending a constant stream of data back to our data center.
In each of those 400 sensors, there's a lot of signals which aren't earthquakes.
So we're generating this incredible volume of data.
This is probably a truck going by.
Where the AI comes in would be filtering out what we call cultural noise. Trains, trucks, people.
Vibration info from all 400 sensors in the region is fed into a machine learning algorithm, which is trained to differentiate earthquake tremors from, say, construction or buses. Using machine learning and a huge database of known sounds, the AI can quickly sort through the noise of the natural world.
Oh, there's some interesting stuff going on here, guys. Machine learning enables us to quickly find the signal of earthquakes.
The Emergency Management Center here would be one of our key immediate users.
Earthquake. Earthquake.
If it's a big earthquake, then within a second or two,
Unit clearing on 5, identify.
our computer algorithms determine what area it's going to affect.
Damage assessment.
And then create a warning for that.
Depending on how close you are to the source, the warnings can be very short, like less than a second, to maybe as much as 3 minutes.
But when a massive earthquake struck northern Japan in 2011, it's had warning. Between 20 to 90 seconds, depending on how far they were from the quake's epicenter. And yet, almost 16,000 lives were still lost. Is there any way AI could buy us even more warning time by predicting the next big one?
Earthquake prediction is a really hard problem because we don't know where the earthquakes are going to happen. Not really, right? We don't know when they're going to happen. And we don't really know how big that zone is. that the fault reaches before it all of a sudden snaps.
And his team have come up with a way to create earthquakes in the lab.
You're at 2.3 right now.
We're simulating the kind of thing that happens in the upper few miles of the Earth's crust.
So I'm just gonna, I guess, set this up before we get started.
The goal today is to try to figure out if we can create laboratory earthquakes under a range of conditions and use machine learning to predict that whole range.
On a small scale, this test mimics what happens on a huge fault like the Cascadia. It's basically two massive tectonic plates, one under the coastal Northwest and one under the Pacific. One slides under the other and sometimes snags, causing friction and pressure. When it's too much, they violently slip, causing an earthquake.
We've got lab seismometers that are located right next to the fault zone.
And I try to align it with the lasers.
Giant press, home built, driven by hydraulics. We're controlling the stresses on the fault. We're controlling how fast the stresses build up to some critical point where it's going to break. There are groans and creaks on the fault, micro earthquakes, a lot of little mini failure events.
Yeah, let's look at the acoustic side of this.
We're listening to everything that happens in the faults, and we're using machine learning to find the patterns in it. Is there something happening that we can use to say, this is about to go big?
Yeah.
That was another one
so
there.
Now we are actually recording energy emissions during the...
We're hearing all that little chatter you hear. Let's zoom back in because we're gonna get a nice big one here right now.
Here comes.
Bang. Yeah.
That was big.
That yellow line is a measure of the shear stress on the fault. We're watching it build. The whole time it's increasing, there are micro earthquakes that we're listening to. And what we've realized is that we can use those micro earthquakes along with machine learning to predict the time of the next event.
These micro earthquakes that they're listening to are too faint for the human ear, but not for machine learning. It uses faint signals to predict earthquakes we can hear and feel.
That was a nice big high frequency event. We're probably gonna get another one.
Ooh, that was a big one there.
Listening to the small events to teach us about when the big events are going to occur.
No, that's fabulous. That's so cool to see. Yeah.
Another one is coming up.
We're predicting the time of the next earthquake, and we're predicting the duration of it.
How many cycles do we have already?
Something like 20, 30 events.
It's a game changer using artificial intelligence because now we can use machine learning to ask questions about why is that happening? Is there some geometric structure that's building inside the fault zone that is somehow seen by artificial intelligence?
The machine learning prediction is here. The red line is the experimental data. Every time it drops, that's a lab earthquake. And then the blue line is a model prediction based on machine learning. It's impressive how well it works, right?
Yeah, that you see the same thing in different cycles. Exactly the same cluster appears just right before failure.
Yeah, you can see, it's not perfect, but it's damn close to perfect.
We've shown beyond the shadow of a doubt that AI, machine learning, can predict laboratory earthquakes.
We're probably going to get another one. Yeah, there it is right there. That's awesome. Yeah, right? Makes sense.
The challenge is how do we scale that from what's being measured in the laboratory to what we measure with seismic sensors over an area of hundreds or thousands of square kilometers.
As artificial intelligence goes from the lab out into the world is much more complicated. And so there's a lot of factors that might not have been modeled. If we can transfer out, if we can generalize, that would be really, really amazing.
How many years is it going to be before we can predict or forecast something about Cascadia? I do think that's within our lifetime.
Think about a self-driving car out in the real world. In order to build that system and have it work, it's got to be virtually perfect. If you had a 99% accuracy rate, that wouldn't be anywhere near enough, because once you take that 1% error rate and you multiply that by millions of cars on the road, I mean, you'd have accidents happening constantly. So the error rate has to be extraordinarily low in order to pull this off.
In February of 2020, Tesla released this 30-second clip showing an example of what the forward-facing autopilot camera sees, along with all the annotations made by the computer, which demonstrates what the system understands about the world around it. Okay, so at first glance it looks pretty complicated, but also pretty cool, right? Let's take a closer look at the details. Let's start with these arrows on the road. Now we've all seen these before, indicating which way you can turn, but look at how they're labeled. LA, FA, and RA, that's left arrow, front arrow, or forward arrow, and right arrow. These are correctly labeled by the system. If we keep advancing, we can already see LA, FA, and RA in the distance. Now if we move closer, it reveals that those are correct annotations of each arrow. If you're not impressed yet, just remember that this is a computer recognizing arrows on a video that it has never seen before. Alright, let's talk about stop signs. Now there's a stop sign coming up, as you can see here in the intersection, but if we rewind to go see where Autopilot first saw that stop sign, we can see that it actually found it really far back, all the way out here. If I can find this frame, and if we zoom in, we could see that stop sign labeled and outlined in red. Now, if we keep going, as we approach the intersection, we can see that not only is the stop sign labeled, but the line where the car should stop is also labeled with a red line, as well as the letter S for stop. Over here we have another stop sign coming up, and as you can see, it's labeled with the red outline as well as the stop line. And even though that truck was there, it still managed to properly label the stop line. Pretty impressive. Alright, next up is probably my absolute favorite part of this video. It's super impressive. So if we look here on the left side, the third row from the bottom, there's a value called wet road with a number value associated to it. Now I want you to pay close attention to the number and the value associated to wet road as we approach a puddle in the distance right in front of that stop sign. So as we go forward, the puddle begins to come into view, and there we go, wet road has increased and is highlighted in green or yellow. That is just one of the most impressive things that I have seen Autopilot do. And if you're not impressed, then you should be, because this is a computer recognizing water on a road from a video feed that it has never seen before. Now, another very interesting thing we can see in this clip is the little red X that appears right where the road splits to go left or right. Now, I suspect that this red X is the system labeling the lane line that goes to the right as a lane line that Autopilot should not follow. This is brilliant because the car is in the left lane and the system recognizes that and labels the right lane line with an X so that it does not follow it. Now, if this little detail doesn't seem very impressive to you, try to put yourself in the shoes of a computer. You as a human have deductive reasoning. You obviously know that you should not be following that line, but the computer has to take all of the information it has in the surroundings to make a decision about whether or not it should follow that lane line. This is a computer that we're talking about, and the fact that it can use that information to make that decision is extremely impressive and gives me hope for Autopilot actually completing full self-driving in the future. In terms of traffic lights, we can see here that there are two green lights at this intersection. They are both labeled by green rectangles. So we know here that the cameras and the computer recognize both the color and the location of both of these traffic lights. Next, let's take a look at how cars are labeled. Now here you can see that there's a yellow 3D box around all cars that Autopilot can see. And as we make this turn here, there's something interesting about the cars parked on the right. Even though the cars are not fully visible, the system still predicts those boxes and where they are. Another interesting thing that we can see here as the car drives along is that on the right side, where the cars are parked, we can actually see that the computer indicates a line, a lane line. Even though there's no actual line painted, the car recognizes that those parked cars are a border in a sense where the car cannot go, and therefore puts a lane line. I'm sure that there are some other things in this video that I did not pick up on, but those are a few things that I found extremely impressive And honestly, it's a look into the future of autopilot and what it.
For the U.S. Army, artificial intelligence is a broad spectrum of technologies that will become an enabler for training and equipping soldiers. On the training front, the Army's interest in artificial intelligence technologies lies in their potential power to automate, scale, and operate the Synthetic Training Environment, or STE. To support the AI capabilities needed for the STE's interactive battlefields, research has begun in multiple areas. In this video, we'll look at 3 of them: adaptive synthetic characters, civilian populace behavioral modeling, and automated scenario event injection. The first AI effort will create adaptive synthetic characters for interactive training simulations. Using machine learning, these synthetic characters will adapt to the actions of past and current users, adjusting their behaviors towards new teams, opponents, and situations. The cognitive architecture underlying these adaptive behaviors will be a hybrid of high-level symbolic processing and low-level probabilistic and neural representations. This research leverages an existing hybrid cognitive architecture called Sigma and works toward virtual characters that are autonomous, socially interactive with soldier trainees, and that behave as human-like as possible. The characters will not only adapt based on interactions with human trainees, but also through simulated engagements and pre-existing data, models, and knowledge. The second prong of AI research for the STE focuses on the behavioral modeling of civilians, specifically intelligent patterns of life. AI algorithms based on theory of mind will automatically compile socio-cultural models and turn them into real-time behaviors that run natively in the STE. This technology produces a multitude of unique autonomous individual agents, recreating the patterns of life that emerge from real populations and dense urban areas. Driven by factors such as values, beliefs, and goals, each agent will make their own unique decisions without the need for manually authored rules, resulting in varied life patterns. The agents will react independently to decisions from both friendly and hostile forces based on the beliefs and attitudes they form. Ultimately, these critical advances will provide realistic human terrain and help warfighters train on the human dimension. The third prong of AI for the STE is the automated injection of master scenario events lists, or measles, into virtual training. Traditionally, these measles articulated fictional events, injects that addressed specific training needs. Injects were triggered by high-level conditions that required a human in the loop, as human reasoning was essential for real-time assessment of the scenario. Now, STE researchers are combining neural networks with symbolic reasoning algorithms to interpret the state of the simulated battle space and inject scenario events based on training needs, all in real time. By monitoring the situation, tactics, and strategies of human and autonomous participants, the Inject AI will provide a more responsive, flexible, and robust training experience for the soldier. As these AI efforts move forward, researchers will integrate the capabilities within the STE's common synthetic environment, allowing measles to influence adaptive synthetic characters and intelligent agents, and vice versa. This will give soldiers deeply immersive and dynamic training scenarios to hone their warfighting and decision-making skills. The Synthetic Training Environment, revolutionizing training to build readiness.
Alpha dogfight trials are a subset of a larger program inside of DARPA called ACE, the Air Combat Evolution Program. And in ACE, what we're trying to do is demonstrate scalable, trusted human autonomy for air combat.
The goal is to successfully recognize and exploit adversary weaknesses and mistakes, and to maneuver to a position of control while denying and defeating the adversary's weapon employment zone.
You can see a reticle around the enemy aircraft to let them know where he is. And you can see him getting a tally right there right now. So I can't wait for this fight. We've talked long enough. It's the main event, Alpha Dogfight Trials. Banger, I'm going to turn it over to you. Human versus AI, fights on.
Disco, thanks for that. With that, we'll get ready to go.
You can see that red, yellow, green, and when it hits green, the
Fight's on,
fight is
fight's on.
These initial conditions, you can see that range opening up. Banger aggressively maneuvering nose low, looking to collapse that range as quickly as he can. 6,000, 5,000. He's going to continue that turn and watch as he stays outside of that nose as much as possible. Look at that. 0 damage to Banger through that initial merge, something we did not see almost any of the AI agents able to do. And now it's going to be a matter of controlling that range. There'll be another opportunity as they come back around, that range separation opening back up. It's going to be very difficult to stay out of the way of that nose there.
A little hit there by Banger, took a little bit.
Hit. Absolutely. As this fight's going now downhill, vertical down, you see each of them really rolling that airplane and going aggressively downhill, passing now down through 10,000 feet, fighting this very aggressive 2-circle fight. And you can see there's Heron with that really amazing fine motor control for that gunshot in a very, very close range, very high heading crossing hill, very high close.
So we got a vertical fight. You can see in the lower right-hand corner, Banger coming in over the top, trying to avoid that merge, getting hit once again. Very close to running out of aircraft health in this first setup. Aggressive nose low maneuvers. Heron sticking with him though.
That's right. Heron doing a nice job, and they've managed to get back to a good control position there, and they're going to score the first victory of the setup today.
Looks like he's Heron saddling up and with the kill.
And again, more of just that superhuman aiming ability that we're seeing out of Heron in this simulated environment, able to just follow that other airplane along, even through defensive types of maneuvers.
Absolutely amazing.
What does the future look like? I have an idea, but I can tell you exactly what it sounds like.
This is the official attempt.
Is it going to work?
We're about to find out.
Racing is not just driving a car, it's also about intuition, caution, aggression, and taking risks.
Holly, can you confirm 200 at the end of this straight?
Okay.
It requires almost a preternatural will to win. So, how fast can a race car go without a human behind the wheel?
Motorsport has always been taking technology to the limits.
You all good your side, Holly?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. One of the goals of RoboRace is to really facilitate the accelerated development of driverless technology.
British startup RoboRace wants to break new ground in driverless cars. To do so, they believe they need to test the boundaries of the technology. After years of trial and error, they've created the world's first AI race car.
The thing that I love most about working at RoboRace is we have a dream of being faster and better and safer than a human. As a human, you have lots of advantages over a computer. You know exactly where you are in the world. You have eyes that can enable you to see things. So we need to implement technology on vehicles to enable them to see the world. We have a system called OXTS. It's a differential GPS, which means it's military grade. We also use LiDAR sensors. These are basically laser scanners. They create for the vehicle a 3D map of the world around it. And there's one last thing that we use, vehicle-to-vehicle communication between the cars. Each of them can tell the other car the position of it on the track. This information together. At RoboRace, we can provide the hardware, but then we need software companies to come to us to implement their software.
The team created their own custom software, the AI driver that pilots the car. And since each of the team's programmers have their own distinct personality, does that mean each of their AI drivers will have different personalities or instincts too?
The two teams that we have here are using two slightly different approaches to the same problem of making a car go around the track in the shortest distance and in the fastest way.
The TUM strategy is really to keep their code as simple as possible. It's maybe a very German efficient way of doing things.
Okay, thanks. We will check now.
First test for each team is the overtake, to see if their AI can pass another car at high speed.
It's difficult for AI because we have to make a lot of decisions and a lot of planning, a lot of computations to calculate what the car should do in which millisecond.
Everybody has seen high-speed crashes in motorsport before. We'd quite like to avoid that. For this reason, during testing, we keep a human in the car.
Just let us know when you're in position, please, Reese. In position. Here, Reese, enabling AI. Can you just confirm you got blue light, please?
In order to overtake, they need a second car on track at the same time. This is a vehicle that stays in human-driven mode the whole time, so we know exactly how it's going to behave.
Okay, launch AI from the race control.
And launching in 3, 2, 1.
It's really difficult for AI to learn to overtake. When you have one vehicle on track, it only needs to make decisions about itself. But when you have two vehicles, you have the option to create your behavior in response to another vehicle.
Okay, we are going to release the speed limit on your car now, Reese.
Woher kommst du?
Ich will meinen Kopf nicht so weit rausstrecken.
Ja.
Das ist schon mutig. Vielleicht besser nur den Arm. Huh?
Overtake triggered.
Nice. Ja, Mann. Wie war's? Könnt ihr eigentlich auch schnell? Das ist ein Klick. Das ist ein Klick.
Team TUM has successfully completed the overtake challenge. Next up, Team Arrival.
So, Tim, can you go to take position on the start line, please?
Enabling AI. Can you confirm blue light, please? Confirm blue light. And launch in 3, 2, 1.
So it's looking good so far.
Yeah, everything's okay so far.
Car crashed.
Tim, can you hear me?
Team Arrival's program just couldn't hack it. But for Team TUM, another test awaits.
Can we get the car into the normal start position, please?
And this next one is all about speed, very high speed.
The fastest that humans ever driven around this track was 200 kph.
Translation, that's about 120 miles an hour.
So the AI is going to try to beat that high speed.
And it's going to do it without a human safety net because at that speed, it's borderline unsafe for people.
When the driver climbs out and shuts the door, yeah, your heart rate goes up.
And we are launching in 3, 2, 1. And launch successful. 160, next round 200.
The car has 6 laps, 6 tries to hit top speed. Each lap, the AI will increasingly push the limits of control, traction, and throttle to break the human record.
Ollie to Steve, can we confirm in the Atlas data, is this safe to continue?
Yeah, we think it looks fairly controlled.
Okay, so the next run should be VMAX.
Yeah, 210.
Das ist cool.
Top. Das ist super. Gut.
So du, oder?
Nee, ich ausgefahren.
Ja.
Ausgefahren. Mehr geht jetzt erstmal nicht.
It was a real sense of excitement to see it finally crack the 210 kph mark. It was a real success for RoboRace functionality, as well as building confidence in the team's software. It really showcases what autonomous cars can do, not just on the racetrack, but also for everybody around the world. So we're really hoping that this will improve road technology for the future.
Metaverse is a mixed reality racing format where you can play with data and give the right to place objects to our audience. So it's not just another motorsport thing, it's Motorsport 2.0.
This is either going to be a glimpse into the future
or a spectacular failure.
Most popular and challenging competitive video games ever. Playing Dota means you have to coordinate and focus as a team of 5. AI system, which we spent the last few months training. It uses reinforcement learning at a much larger scale to train our bots to play together as a team. While training our bot, we saw it do a bunch of interesting things. Here are a few examples that we found interesting. Here's a closer look at a big fight. In the bottom left is a graph of the bot's value function, which is the reward the bots predict they will receive in the near future. Crystal Maiden ganks the human sniper and begins channeling her ultimate, and as time goes on, the bot team becomes more confident that it will win the skirmish. After taking out Sniper and Lich, they roam bottom, clearly still expecting to receive a high reward. They bait the human Viper into engaging on a lower level Lich, and then collapse on him to pick up an easy kill. And the human Crystal Maiden runs into the trees, hoping to escape. The bots follow her, trying to regain vision so they can finish her off, eventually finding her. Here, the human sniper attempts to kill the bot Necrophos in mid lane, and as the Necrophos is taking damage, he pulls back toward his tower, forcing the sniper to overextend. The Necrophos teammates surprise the sniper from behind and manage to take him out. Let's manage to find Sniper alone and use practically every high cooldown they have on the single hero. And this one kill ended up winning them the game. In this scene, the human sniper lost, but managed to survive a 1v1 skirmish against the bot Lich. Lich chases the sniper, often losing vision on him, but still correctly guessing which direction he's gone. Eventually, he's able to catch up and finish him off. Here, the bots are trying to make a move on the human base, and they're one barracks away from mega creeps, but are unable to take the barracks while the human team is defending. The bot Lich ends up getting fairly low, and as the humans go to finish him off, instead of running towards his team for safety, he runs in a different direction, tempting them to chase him, and in doing so, abandon their base. This allows his teammates to take the last barracks. But we're hoping that this will give us more and more insight about how AI can solve complex problems of any kind.
Is that there are some things that AI can already do better than humans. And then there's things that it can't do anywhere close to humans. But now where the frontier is going to be moving and is where computers come up to the human level, not quite, and then surpass humans. And I think the odds are overwhelming that we will eventually be able to build an artificial brain that is at the level of the human brain. The big question is, how long will it take?